We've all had that moment on our weight loss journey where you have something happen or you ate something that you feel like you quote unquote shouldn't have, you feel like you screwed up, and then you spiral and you don't know how to recover and you feel like you messed everything up and you go into a depression hole. Whatever version of that happens to you sometimes. We're gonna go over today what to do, but also more importantly, what not to do when you feel like you screwed up your weight loss program. My name is Michelle. I'm the founder of Nutrish Mish. We've helped over 10,000 people lose weight and keep it off, which is the most important part. We have an 83% long-term success rate because we help our clients get to the root of the problem and develop a framework that works for them for life. So like I said, it could be one of the most disheartening things when you're doing a weight loss program and you're feeling like you're doing so well and you have good momentum, but then you feel like you screwed up. People torture themselves over this. You make yourself feel guilty. You make yourself feel like you're hopeless. You make yourself feel like it's you, like you have no willpower, like all of these things that aren't true. I always tell my clients when they're experiencing this, I always ask, if I put a thought bubble over your head, what would that thought bubble say? And a lot of times it's like the craziest things that you probably would never say to a family or friend, we say to ourselves. But what happens with that is we create all this like negative momentum, and then we're missing a huge opportunity to kind of learn and grow, whereas if you start to look at it a little bit differently, you're gonna have a much different reaction and you'll be able to recover a lot faster from what you might perceive as a screw up. So before we get into what to do, right, there's 3 things that I want you to do, all right? And make sure you stay tuned to the end because the third one is the most important one. But before we get into that, we're gonna get into what you are not going to do, okay? And I know this is gonna be where you wanna go. Just trust me, I am your Sherpa on this magical carpet ride. I'm gonna make sure that you are successful with this, but you need to trust me, you need to pay attention because this is where I've seen thousands of people screw it up. People do 2 things when this happens. 1, they beat themselves up. You do not want to beat yourself up, even though naturally that's where you're going to want to go. But when you beat yourself up, you're not in a frame of mind where you're going to want to create positive momentum. Remember, we talked about this in other videos. The brain wants to move away from things that make it feel bad and towards things that make it feel good. So here's an interesting example, right? Let's say that you're at work, right? And you mess something up at work and your boss comes up to you and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you screwed this up. Like, what is wrong with you? It's like, you don't even pay attention, like blah, blah, blah. And they're just like screaming at you. You're going to freeze up, right? You're not going to be in a position to learn, to grow, to do anything. And you're going to want to be like, get me the F out of here, right? And it's going to have that really like negative imprint on your brain. Versus, let's say you screwed something up at work and your boss is like, you know what? Don't worry. Totally understand where this mistake came from. I'm going to show you how to do it. You're totally going to get it next time. Now, all of a sudden, you're in a position to be like, oh, okay, like I made a little mistake, but I'm going to learn from it. If you are constantly berating yourself and beating yourself up, you are not in a position to learn and grow and kind of like create positive momentum. If anything, you're going to want to completely shut down. So I know it's hard and people don't necessarily pay attention to their self-talk, but when you do have something that you might perceive as a slip up, I want you to be very conscious of how you talk to yourself and do not under any circumstances beat yourself up. I'm going to tell you in a second what to do instead, but make sure that you're very conscious of that because sometimes it happens without you even being aware. Number 2, you're going to want to do this. I know you're going to want to do this. I need you not to do this. Don't overcompensate the next day. So meaning like don't starve yourself the next day. Don't severely restrict your calories the next day. You don't have to do that. First of all, you can't do any real damage in a day. Now, if you hop on the scale, it might seem high because if you did have like a little mini binge or you did eat something that usually those types of food are going to be high in sodium, which is going to make you retain water. So if you want to torture yourself, which I don't recommend, and get on the scale the next day, what you're going to see is you're going to see the scale go up, but it's not real weight. It is actually impossible to gain a pound of body fat in a day because there's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. Given someone's normal burn is about, 2,000 calories a day, you'd have to be eating about 5,500 calories in a day, which like, trust me, nobody is doing that. But what people end up doing then is then they end up being very, very strict the second day, where then you start to feel restricted, you start to feel deprived, and then you end up in this like all or nothing cycle, which I'm sure so many of you guys can relate to, which means when you're being quote unquote good, you're being really good, but that's not maintainable, and then you're bad for a long period of time too, which also not maintainable. So you don't want to overcompensate the next day. Even if you're in a situation where you were eating kind of crazy for multiple days, like right, let's say you're on a vacation, you don't need to come back from vacation and severely overcompensate. If your weight is up a little bit because of how you were eating, let's say over a period of time, once you get right back to normal, you're not eating enough to maintain that weight gain, so your weight will naturally come back down. You don't need to overcompensate, just get back to normal and it'll drop right back down to where it was before you had the quote unquote slip up. So quick recap, what we're not going to do, we are not going to beat ourselves up. Say it with me, we're not going to beat ourselves up. And also we are not going to overcompensate the next day. We're just going to get back to normal. Trust me, it works. So we got into what not to do. Now let's get into what you are going to do. The first thing I want you to ask yourself and be honest, did I actually screw up? Here's why I want you to ask yourself that. I had a woman come in once, right? And she comes in and she's like, oh my God, Michelle, I had the worst week ever. I'm so embarrassed. I don't even want to get on the scale. And I was like, okay, fine. So she gets on the scale just to kind of see what's going on. Again, we like to use the scale as a barometer. And oddly enough, she lost weight. So I'm like looking at her food journal. I'm like, where did you feel like you screwed up here? She's like, you don't see? She's like, I had a slice of pizza on Friday. And I was like, Okay, and now for her, she thought, like a lot of people think, you have to eat perfectly in order to lose weight. So the second that she had something that she enjoyed, or pizza or whatever it was, she looked at that as like a total screw up, even though obviously it wasn't. Now, sometimes you actually might feel like you're screwing up. Sometimes you might have a binge or something that's like a little bit more impactful. But a lot of times I think there's something called the negativity bias, where we're thinking like any little thing that we didn't do that was like on brand or on the program or whatever, that's going to negatively impact us. When in reality, your body responds to majorities. So if I have somebody that, let's even say, isn't eating well 2 days, but then the other 5 days they eat really well, they're going to remember the 2 days. The 2 days are going to stick out in their mind, but they actually ate well the majority of the week. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to be okay. It's very similar to grades on a test, right? You might get 1 F, right? And you might get all the A's. Now, like, you're not going to really remember or acknowledge all the A's. You're going to remember the F. But at the end of the semester, right, that F didn't factor in as much as the A's did. So you're still going to have a good average for the semester. So your body is the same way. Your body's going to respond to all the good things that you're doing more so than the 1 or 2 anomalies that might feel like a screw up to you. So the first thing I want you to do is like, did I actually screw up, or am I just kind of like really focused on the negative, but the majority of the time I ate well? So that brings me to step number 2. Let's say you really did have a slip up. Let's say you really did have a screw up. Again, we're not going to like take extreme measures. We're not going to significantly overcompensate. You're not going to like starve yourself the next day. What I do want you to do is I want you to look at this as an opportunity to practice the skill set of getting quote unquote back on track, or getting back to your kind of normal healthy way of eating, because that is a skill set. This is what a lot of people miss in this whole process. A lot of people, again, are trying to manipulate their weight. They're dieting. You're just trying to see a number, versus when you're actually losing weight, meaning you don't find it again, it doesn't come back. That is a reflection of you changing your habits and your behaviors and your mindset and everything around food. And a really good skill set to have in your back pocket is having something that's a little bit off what you would normally do, and then being able to get back on track. And if you don't have opportunities to practice that skill set, well, you're never going to get good at it. And once you see that you can do it, now you're going to have that skill set in your back pocket. So next time that happens in a month or 2 or 3 or 4, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not even going to panic because I know exactly how to manage it, because I have managed it well in the past. So number 1, ask yourself, did I really screw up or not really? Number 2, if you did actually screw up, I want you to have a mentality change around it, where you're looking at it as like, okay, let me practice this skill set, which is a necessary skill set and an important one and an overlooked one, of having something that's a little bit off the way I normally eat and then getting right back to normal. That's hard for some people to do, but if you practice it enough times, you'll get good at it. Now, all of a sudden, this thing that you were perceiving as a negative is an opportunity, which brings me to number 3. I want you to learn from it, right? So what happened there? Again, if you're not kind of like looking at what happened during the week and making adjustments to like whatever pitfalls you fell into, you're missing these huge opportunities to learn and grow and lose the weight and keep it off at an exponential rate. So let's say, for example, you're like, you know what? I completely binged last night. You could just make yourself feel bad about it, whatever, but then maybe when you're thinking about it, you're like, you know what? I binged last night because I didn't eat anything during the day. Like, I had a crazy day. I was running around. I like barely ate breakfast. I barely ate lunch. So I was probably starving when I got home. So that's interesting. Every time I don't really eat enough during the day, I have a really hard time with the amount that I'm eating at the end of the day. So now you know how to learn and grow and adjust so that next time that's not going to happen. A lot of times when something feels like a screw up or a slip up, it's a great learning opportunity to plug a hole in your system or plug a hole in your process. But when you just get angry and annoyed with yourself and then you try to overcompensate and do all these kind of diety behaviors, you really miss that opportunity. So number 1, did you really screw up? Number 2, just get right back into it. It's a skill set. You're practicing it. It's actually an opportunity. It's a good mindset shift to have. And then number 3, how can you learn? How can you grow? How can you adjust from that? And that's going to make you a stronger eater. It's going to make you a healthier eater. And it's going to make it a whole lifestyle change for you rather than just a number you're trying to chase on the scale. If this helped you, share it with a friend, like, comment. I like all the positivity. So, tell me how you felt. And then make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss a tip, trick, or video.